If you're like me, you're editing photos almost on a daily basis. And I want to share 3 different Photoshop tools that I use almost literally every single day. And I just want to preface that all of these are in Photoshop, but generally I'm taking my photos from Lightroom into Photoshop to get these done, hitting save, and then it applies it back into Lightroom. The first tool is actually a really fun tool that you may not even know exists, or maybe you've seen it, or maybe you even have used it. It's actually called the Object Selection tool. So if you go to this tool here that's normally under the Quick Selection or the Magic Wand tool, you will see something called the Object Selection tool. This is a fairly new tool, nothing super crazy. However, it does allow you to select very specific things in your photo if you want to remove just one item or object or thing that's in your photo. Or you could select, all but the subject or something along those lines. Lightroom kind of has a feature like this where if you are trying to mask something, you can select a subject or anything like that. However, in Photoshop, it allows you to select different objects so you can do whatever you want with them. For example, I could select this guy here if I'm not happy, and I could generative fill to get him out of the frame, or I could take him and move him somewhere. So if you have an object that maybe needs to be put somewhere else, you could just take it and move it, and then you could fill that in with, generative fill or anything like that. Or if you're just trying to select an object to edit it directly or anything along those lines, this tool could be more than just a generative fill feature. It allows you to select very specific things to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to trying to select something. Because as we all know, the Quick Selection and Magic Wand tool are pretty hit or miss. You're either really good or it's really terrible, and it's kind of annoying sometimes. So the Object Selection tool can be used for a ton of different things and a ton of different photos, and I highly recommend taking a peek at it. Here's another example. I could select my backpack if I wanted to get rid of that. I could select people, this boat, the buildings in the background. This photo here, I could select different things like the actual tram, the background, the sky, things like that. And you can also use similar tools to select, just the background or just the sky or just the person, but that's kind of how that works. This next tool is very similar. However, it selects other things. So the Object Selection tool allows you to select any specific object. This tool allows you to select multiple different things. So as we know, we already have a select subject button and a remove background and other generative AI tools, which I'll maybe go over in another video. However, for this one is actually under your healing brush tool, but they all also have something now called the remove tool. So there's the healing brush, the remove tool, the spot healing, the patch tool. We're gonna go under the remove tool, which can be useful by itself if you're just selecting different things to remove in general. However, at the very top here, you'll notice something that says find distractions. So what this will actually do is it'll select either people or wires and cables, and I'm gonna show you both of these examples. So for people, this is a really good photo because there's a lot of people in here. And although it did select my fingers here, you can remove it if you really wanted to. You would just hit the remove button here, and then I would just make my thing a little bit bigger, and then you can remove that so it doesn't select things you don't want it to. And then once you're all good, you have the option for auto, which may use generative AI as well, because if it wants to remove these people, it may use that. But you have different options. You can turn generative AI on and off. Maybe you run out of credits or you don't have that function in Adobe yet for some reason. But I'm gonna keep it on auto, and then I'm gonna go ahead and hit the check mark, which will go ahead and remove all of the people in the photo. That way I don't have to use the object remove tool to remove them separately. I can just have them removed pretty easily. And then there's a backpack here as well. That could be useful to use the Object Selection tool or some other way, shape, or form. I mean, sometimes I even just use the lasso tool and then just use generative fill. But that is one way to remove people from your photo if there are a lot of distractions and a lot of people in your photo. On the other hand, we now have the option to remove cables. So, a photo like this, I probably wouldn't remove the cables, but I wanted to use it as an example. And this isn't even my photo. I took this from a stock website because I couldn't find any of mine that have, cables, because it's pretty niche. But this will select cables and wires, and you actually only have to click it once and it does it all for you. You actually don't have to hit the buttons and check marks and stuff. So I'll hit cables and wires, you'll wait a second, and then it'll remove all of the wires and cables in your shot, and boom, done. And honestly, you can barely tell they were there in general. I mean, everything looks pretty natural and normal. So it works really well if you maybe take a picture of even a fence could potentially work, a lot of cables in the sky, or wires, or what it may be. It can remove all of those. So I wanted to give you one more example of this, which is more of an extreme example. Obviously, if you took a photo like this, you're probably not going to want to remove all of the wires, but this is just an example because it still does a pretty good job, although not perfect. But it just shows you the capabilities of just clicking a button and boom, Bob's your uncle. So you can see some of the marks here where some of the cables were, but again, there were a lot of cables in this photo. But you could even come in and fix this up and make it look normal after the fact. I mean, this will save you a ton of time, especially if you're in like a photo gallery where, say you're shooting a wedding and there's a distraction or something in the photo that needs to be removed in like 10 different photos. You could just bring each one into Photoshop real quick from Lightroom, click 2 buttons, go right back to Lightroom and just keep going. Instead of having to do every photo and take 5 minutes per photo, now you're only taking 15 seconds per photo. So it's a really cool feature to have. And then lastly, we have one last fun feature here. And it can be used in multiple different ways, shapes, or forms. It just really depends on what you're editing and what you need to use it for. So I went ahead and I actually cropped this photo on purpose like this to show you an example of how you can use this next feature, but it can be used in multiple different ways. So for me, I most often use this when I have a crooked photo and I need to crop it to fix it, but I also don't want to lose part of the photo from the crop. So, for this example, I would crop this to put it back straight again, maybe something like that. But now all of the tops of the houses are cut off. So what I'll do is I'll actually expand the photo a little bit, and I'll even go down too. And you don't have to do a specific ratio. My crop is just specifically 16:9, but you can turn that off and make it a custom crop. But for the sake of this video and example, I want the most area as possible just to show you how well it works. And it's actually a feature called Generative Expand. It automatically pops up when you're in the crop tool and you make a crop that is bigger than the photo. So what I'll do is I'll hit Generative Expand, and then I don't really need to put anything in here because there's nothing notable. And then it'll do its work and it'll expand the photo, and it'll add back the tops of the buildings and things like that so that it looks a little bit more normal. Now, this isn't always perfect, but it depends on how much area you're trying to add. Now for this, I can't even tell those buildings are fake at this point. And it does give you a few different options if you are curious. For some reason, the third one for me just doesn't exist, but I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. There is a little bit of discrepancies in the top of this building, and that may be because I did add a pretty decent chunk of photo to it. But I could always generate more if I wanted to make it look a little bit nicer. But that's a really fun way to be able to make sure you don't lose parts of your photo when you are cropping a, unstraight photo, because it does happen to us sometimes. And then one last example here, just for fun, I just wanted to expand this photo a little bit just to show you the capabilities it has to expand, photos. I'm just gonna add a little bit to this. Maybe I wanted a little bit more to it. Maybe the, framing of me in the photo wasn't that great. And again, most of these photos are unedited 100%, so don't mind that portion. The idea is to just kind of show you the, photo itself in the feature. But I would recommend normally editing fully your photo first and then taking it into generative AI, mainly because when you do generative AI type stuff, it's not always the perfect quality. So I'll edit the entire photo first so that I don't have to edit the photo after the generative AI was added, because it can add a little bit of funk to it. But as you can see, I did do a little bit of generative expand on this photo and it looks fairly normal. There are some weird things over here with the backpack, but this option here is nearly unnoticeable at this point because it brings the backpack back. So that's just a really fun tool you can utilize. These are 3 tools that I use almost on a daily basis when I'm editing photos, and I highly recommend you take a peek into looking to use them because again, you don't have to be a Photoshop expert or someone who uses Photoshop on a daily basis. It's just an extra tool that I use while editing galleries to make it a little bit faster and speedier so that I'm not spending hours upon hours doing meticulous things to my photos when I could be actually finishing the galleries and getting my stuff out faster. So I will come out with some more videos like this. Let me know in the comment section down below what types of things you would like to see, whether it's photo or video editing, things that might speed up your process or help you with your editing workflow. But that's really it for this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.